Welcome to everyone that's here. And we will we'll get started just as soon as the clock tells me to.
Don't be a victim of time.
We're all victims of time. Ask my primary care physician. All right. 2 more minutes.
Hank, where are you? It looks so sunny and warm.
Well, Hank's always got a bad internet connection. Hank, where are you?
We're excited to debut our new streaming show, Person to Person, featuring intimate conversations with authors, celebrities, and more. First episode will premiere tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time on the CBS News app.
Okay. I'm going to jump the gun by about 30 seconds. First order of business is calling the meeting to order. This is the January 25th, 2022 meeting of the Chaffey County Planning Commission, wherein we will hopefully complete the review and deliberations of the Aspire Tours application. But before we get into that, I just need to take roll of the currently seated planning commissioners. And I'm just going to go down my list of participants. I'm Anderson Horn. I am the current chair. Commissioner Allen, are you there?
I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner Rauschke, are you there?
Present.
Excellent. Scrolling down. Commissioner Kurgis.
Present.
Thank you. And Commissioner Dumas.
Present.
Excellent. And then is Hank on the line? Anybody see Hank? Were y'all saying? Were y'all trying to say Hank Held was there in someplace sunny?
Yeah, I can see him, but he can't hear us apparently.
He's under
Thank you.
John. Hey, Greg, can you send him oh, there he is.
All right. Hank, are you there? Which one is Hank? Oh, John. Okay. There he is. Well, it just says John. Usually it says John Held, but all right. Well, I see he is on the line, even if he is not vocalizing successfully. All right. That's that. We have no minutes for approval. We have as our second item on the agenda, election of officers. That said, there are some new commissioners that are not joining us tonight. Will they be here next week?
I hope so.
Okay,
So,
should we postpone the election of officers until the,
yes.
all right, I would move as chair that we postpone the election of officers until next week, when our new commissioners will be with us. It's only appropriate that they be included in that as their first deliberative act. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
All right, thank you, Marjo. If you would, commissioners, please use the chat function.
Let's do roll call.
Oh, yeah, instead of chat, I'll just walk down and just state your vote. Hank, if you'll just use the chat function if you can't hear us. Commissioner Rowski, how do you vote on the motion?
Aye.
Thank you. Dumas? Thomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right. Commissioner Allen, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Commissioner Held, how do you vote?
Hmm.
Hank, I hope you can hear me. Maybe, why don't you just message him?
He says he doesn't have any audio yet.
All right. Why don't you just message him directly
Uh-huh.
and let him know what the motion is and how he votes? Is Bill Baker on the line?
Yes, I'm here and I vote aye.
Okay, thank you, sir. Welcome. I didn't see you on my first run through. Sorry about that. Commissioner Kurgus, how do you vote?
Aye.
And thank you, and I vote aye. So, thank you all. Let us proceed to the meat of the meeting. The continuation of Aspire Tours Limited Impact Review. We have heard various and sundry staff contributions. We have heard public comment. And public comment is now closed. So now the only thing we have left are our deliberations. So do we want to does staff have a recommendation for where we should start? Do we have proposed findings and conditions, or
Conditions.
just conditions?
Correct.
Because did we do findings last time?
We
I'm
had
trying to remember.
findings.
Okay, well, can we pull up our findings? So we can all have our recollections refreshed, and then we'll move into consideration of our conditions of approval.
Betsy, do you have those? They aren't formalized in a separate document, but they're in the previous minutes.
Hi, yeah, Betsy here. Yes, I do. I just need to be able to share my screen. It doesn't look like I have access right now.
There you go. Sorry about that.
That's okay, Greg. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Um, Loop. All right, everybody see our draft here?
That's
ma'am.
the conditions, and so we wanted to start with the findings that were not included with this draft.
Betsy, they were done on December 7th. Do you have those minutes? You could just take them out or pull them up.
Yes. Let's see. I don't know if this is it. It's not them.
Betsy, I think you had that. It was on the December 7th minutes.
Yeah, I think that there were a couple drafts.
Oh, okay.
Might be on that other computer that I don't have with me.
Christy, you sent them to me today. I could probably forward them somewhere. If
Would you just
That
like to do
becomes-
a screen share? Joanne?
Boy,
We,
okay, it'll be my first time.
no,
but sure.
don't share your screen because we need to edit them and it needs to go to the secretary.
Yeah.
Okay, So,
Well, the findings have been done. And then we were going to go to the conditions.
All right, then that's fine.
But it's been over a month since we've had a chance to look at those and discuss them. So I think it would be prudent and appropriate to review those, as we also often find that the order and topics of the respective findings guide us into being thorough with our conclusion or conditions of approval.
well, I'm happy to forward this to anywhere that would be helpful. I've got it up.
Forward it to
Okay.
Joanne, do you want me to text you Betsy's email?
You could just tell it to me. I'm ready to type.
Well, we have people over, it's not
Okay,
an
sure.
email that we want shared
Okay,
public.
great.
Okay,
I'm ready.
I will text you, okay, Joanne?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay,
I'm looking at 3 devices right now. I'm so great.
There we go.
Okay, does that look right, team? There's only 9 of them, so I thought that might have not been the updated one.
The one I have has 15.
Okay.
okay, it's coming at you, Joanne.
Okay, okay. Okay. Are you seeing it, Betsy?
Yes, I am. I'm turning it into a Word document right now. Thank you all so much for your patience. Just one more sec, please. All right, everybody seeing the findings?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you all so much.
Thank you. Okay. Just walk through these. So number one, it just identifies what the application is for: campground and outfitter facility under land use code in a rural zone under 2.2.3 A, B, and C. Discussion of the rural zone, of which this is a specifically identified appropriate use. Number three, land use code 223 Charlie requires that new non-residential uses they're required to restrict operating hours, develop landscaping, increase setbacks, or other similar mitigation to minimize potential impacts on nearby residential uses. Meet the intent and purpose of the rural zone. Limited agricultural use of the property is proposed. This application complies with conditions of approval with the requirements for the proposed limited impact review, as stated in the staff report and updates. And it identifies the section for campgrounds and camp cabins. That includes a phasing plan for development. This is a business that serves tourism and agritourism sectors. No special events currently proposed. Impacted by the 100-year floodplain, unstable slopes, two drainages on the site, which can be avoided under the proposed development plan. Culvert crossing of Williams and Ham was completed in 2020 with permission of the ditch company. Traffic volume impacts will be mitigated by the use of passenger vans for the guests once they're on site. There's a landscaping plan that's been reviewed and determined adequate as for screening and buffering. Betsy, if you'd continue to scroll down, please. 190W was constructed prior to the current county standards for low volume road. Addresses issues of grade and that sort of thing. We've heard lots of testimony about the grade, the width, sight lines, that sort of thing. There are currently vacation rentals, restaurants, and recreational based businesses within a half mile of the proposed site. And Sand Park well data from the Department of Water Resources shows well depth and pump rate, although we did not identify that in the finding. I don't believe we're obligated to do that. Any questions or clarification or anything about any of the findings?
I have one, which was the point of 15 was to show high variability, not just to show that the site actually exists. So that was the intent of that last statement, was on the variability across that region.
Okay, do you have some proposed language or adjustments to that?
Sand Park well data from DWR shows high variability or wide variability with well depths and pump rates. Wide variability with,
Either high or wide. How about significant variability? Significant variability in well depth and pump rates. All right, Marjo, does that?
yeah, I mean, if you want to cite the actual statute for, adequate water supply, we can do that, but that's what that's referring to.
Okay. Well, which statute or?
No,
land
we're
use
good.
code?
We're good.
All right. Any other issues with the findings?
I'd like to add one. Number 16. The application is opposed by the Chaffey County Heritage Area Advisory Board.
Is it?
It is.
Is that their unequivocal statement?
That's what they said in the last meeting. And it's in the draft minutes, which we will evaluate next week.
Can you remember why it was opposed?
Impacts to the scenic byway.
That's an O at the beginning of opposed. If you're not currently addressing the hearing, would you please mute yourself? Thank you.
And if you could add due to impacts or concerns regarding the scenic byway, that would be more clear.
SCENIC, scenic.
All right, anything else? Okay. well, hearing none, then why don't we move on to proposed conditions of approval?
Mr.
Actually, hang on, actually, I would just go back, I'm looking at the review agency comment from the Chaffey County Heritage Area Advisory Board. They say they have several concerns that address issues on 190W that I think we pretty clearly established are not the responsibility of the landowner, but the item number 5 in their agency comment says, since the appearance and construction materials for the cabins and other buildings are not addressed in the application, they cannot form a judgment on how the project will affect the view shed. And until those concerns are addressed, they withhold any approval of the project, which is fundamentally different from opposing it.
Well, Andrea, so the date on that is January 28th, 2020.
Right?
So, but Andrea Cohen stated, it's unfortunate we don't have those minutes to look at as finalized, but I have in my personal notes that she recommended, they were opposing the project and recommended not passing it.
All right. I guess it doesn't really matter. Their official statement equivocates a little more, but whatever, we can move on with this. Seems, well, comments that don't need to be made tonight. All right. Proposed conditions of approval. Condition number 1, the 10 campground sites are limited to 40 people total, or 4 people per site. This number includes both guests and employees and references the relevant sections of the land use code.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
question for clarification. We're seeing an amendment date of today, and who amended these? Because this is different than what I received on with yesterday's email. So I was just curious.
I believe there was a meeting in the department with staff from the planning department where they refined and clarified several points in the proposed conditions, but obviously we're the final arbiters on the conditions that we send out from this commission.
Right, and I'm just checking and making sure that what I reviewed and what I commented on today was indeed not the most recent version, but we're seeing that most recent version now.
I believe it was the most recent version until about 2:30 or 3 o'clock this
Okay,
afternoon.
okay, so.
Are the only things that are different is what is in red? Those are the edits from what we were sent to what we're viewing?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for noting that, Paul. I hadn't caught that yet.
Thanks.
Just out of curiosity, is anyone out there on the call hearing the weird audio feedback we're getting here in the hearing room?
None here, sir.
Okay, good. then Greg and I will tolerate it in silence. All right, any issues with condition number 1? All right. This appears, is this a continuation of one, this edit, Greg?
I'd have to defer to Christie.
Christie, is
No,
this?
it should be renumbered.
Okay, so this should be number 2, new number 2. Subject to capacity limitations of water supply. Hang on. Subject to capacity limitations of water supply and/or on-site wastewater treatment system. The maximum number of on-site employees, full-time and seasonal, shall not exceed 10 at any given time. Any need for additional employees shall be reviewed by staff, and it references 7.1.3 and 7.2.2. I would ask a clarifying question. Am I correct that what they're really referencing is residential or overnight on-site employees?
What we want to do is make sure that the number of their employees does not exceed the capacity for the water or the septic system.
Okay. I'm just thinking about, technical compliance. If they've got a group of, 30 guests and 10 staff that are there, and the vans roll up, and maybe there are some guides already in those vans, then they're going to far exceed the cap, but those people aren't, staying there and contributing meaningfully to the burden on either water or the wastewater while they're getting passengers loaded up, customers loaded up and that sort of thing. I don't mean to nitpick, but it seems like there is a specific problem we're trying to address with a pretty general statement.
We did have it limited to three employees, full-time employees, but I think that limits the business artificially dependent on their customer load. So the point we want to limit is that they don't go over their septic system plans and their water system supply. So it's probably not necessarily a number, but that they meet their so I think 10 should be sufficient for their business.
Okay, but you understand the concern I have with that language. Like if the drivers are not on site and they enter on site and there's 4 vans or 3 vans, and they're over by 3, even though the driver's just sitting in the van waiting for people to get in or out.
Right, that wouldn't contribute to their limit. Yeah.
Well, the way it's worded, it does.
Okay.
All right, let's see. Subject to capacity limitations of water supply. I'm trying to figure out how to word that.
I'm getting where both of you are going, and in terms of a condition, and then Paul has his hand up. I just realized I just interrupted him, so he gets to go next. If like when we say the occupancy versus people coming and going, it's that clear line that I think Anderson is trying to get at. So if the I'm not even sure how you just link. So you're saying that the on-site treatment system has capacity for 10 employees versus total occupancy of the entire site? Like, I thought it was cleaner before, so that the treatment system itself, to ensure it doesn't exceed its limits, is limited to the number of people in the campgrounds and the total number of people living on site and the total number of employees. And if it were, the first one is guests. The second one, as it was written, was cabins. There's, what is the other one we're trying to get at? Employees on site? Is that where you're headed with this, Christy?
Maybe I made an error and shouldn't have crossed out number two,
Yeah,
the first part, because yeah, that does limit the number of employees. I mean, that it doesn't include the guests.
counts. So if you want to add one that simply says the total number of on-site employees shall not exceed 10 at any given time, and any additional employees will be reviewed by staff, and you leave 2 and take out subject to capacity limitations, isn't that clean?
Yes,
And then if you wanted to put a condition that to expand any 1, 2, or 3, you know, a capacity assessment of the on-site treatment system is required.
Marjo, I'd agree that it's cleaner, but it's also even more restrictive.
Well, there are restrictions. There's a limited number of cabins. There's a limited number of campground sites. And then there's an agreement within the limited impact review for total number of employees at this time, which could be expanded if reviewed by staff, but it'd be contingent upon the capacity of the systems in place.
All right.
oh, you know what, I think the red in number 2 should replace condition number 3. I'm sorry, this was late today. So the crossed out part, yeah, remove the part of number 3. The crossed out part on 2 gets left in.
So reject change.
Yep. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Over on the ribbon, Betsy, there's the ABC over on the left. There, no, 2 more over to the right now. Under aerial, they're right there. Okay, and then the red part can be
Hit reply.
enter, and that'll be number 3. And then remove what's now 4.
Right.
Okay.
I apologize.
So
All
can
right.
we just reword this? Because you're saying subject to the capacity of the water supply and treatment system, it's limiting only employees. And so I think what you're saying is the maximum number of site employees shall not exceed 10 at any given time. Any need for additional employees shall be reviewed by staff. Staff would look at capacity. You don't need, all of this is about capacity.
I think it was 100%. So,
It doesn't necessarily need to be included in the review. I'm just, unless staff feels that needs to be in there.
it already says to be reviewed by staff. All right, so let's just go back and make sure we've got it. Number one says 10 campground sites limited to 40 people at 4 people per site, including guests and employees. Then on top of that, they've got 6 camp cabins limited to a total combined occupancy of 28 people, including guests and employees. Then number 3 addresses specifically the employees, which are not to exceed 10 at any given time. And we're apparently not addressing their residential or pseudo-residential status there in number 3.
Yeah. That makes
Okay.
sense. However, I still think that the subject to capacity limitations of water and on-site treatment needs to be removed, because that is true for the development as a whole.
All right.
And then there's a bunch of hands up, so you should get Paul.
All righty. Paul, you were up first and you've been exceptionally patient, sir. What guidance do you have for us?
Thank you,
Followed
Mr.
by
Chairman.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where is the capacity number at? You know, we're talking 40 people plus 28 people plus 10. What is the estimated aggregate capacity on this system?
Oh, I think I would clarify and say, it looks like it's just 40 plus 28, because each of those numbers includes guests and employees. So 68, it sounds like.
Yeah, and we actually have an error in the number for the 2. It should be, we've added up the cabins, and that's actually 32. So it's 40, 32, and 10, and that's what the systems are being designed for.
Okay,
Well,
And that's
Alright.
maximum, because you could potentially have people on site who are employees living in the cabins, which would
Right.
reduce that total number, but you're building to capacity.
are you going to have anybody, particularly employees there at any time during the day who may be using water and wastewater who aren't staying in the cabins? Are there any off-site employees or anyone off-site who would be using the system and should be figured into the capacity?
I believe that includes all the staff. So,
Okay,
and Betsy, could you change in number 2, the occupancy to 32? Thank you.
and staff this afternoon deleted the statement of the duration of residency. I'm just curious why that deletion occurred.
Oh, that didn't happen this afternoon. That happened just now. That was in the previous 3.
Okay,
I thought it was
Right.
7 months.
7 months, yes, that's that, but I'm asking.
Yep. We,
Or is that simply because we are exceeding our authority by putting that in, or?
no, the reason is that every single campground in the county is year round. And we thought that was unfair to limit them to only the summer months. So, and that's actually in the time since I've been here working at the county, that it's, the pressure for camping is so high that we have year-round campgrounds now everywhere. So we removed that.
And
Yeah,
that's fine. I was just curious about the removal. I don't have an issue with it. I was just curious why that went away.
Don't want to kick your employees out for
Yeah,
3
no,
months.
no,
to
that's
drift.
fine.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
All right, Paul, is that it for your comment?
At this point, yes, sir.
All right, Commissioner Dumas, Thomas, what do you have?
Yeah, so a couple, I just want to make sure I understand the math again. So 40 is a sum of guests plus employees with respect to campsites. 32 is the sum of employees plus guests for Camp Gappens. So if I just look at those two numbers, I get 72 people, guests plus employees, right? So the maximum number is 72. Now, it turns out that only 10 of those 72, at a maximum, 10 of those 72 can be employees. So, you know, you could have up to 10 employees and 62 guests at any one time. Is that right?
That's what it appears to say.
Okay, good. Then the other thing I was pondering was upon staff review, you know, they could go beyond this number. Did that was that pertaining to this total of 72 or just how many employees you have? If they wanted to increase.
Well, the way it's written that that review only applies to additional employees.
Okay, so
I don't know whether that was the intent, but that's the way it's written.
so that would mean that it would still keep the overall total at 72, but you could have 12 employees and your overall total of 72 would still be there, and that would mean only 60 guests, right?
It appears that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
That
I think
actually
that's how
ma-
it's gonna work out.
okay, because that makes sense then, because the capacity of the system is 72. And we're just saying there is some flexibility in the distribution between guests and employees within that capacity of 72. Right?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Okay,
Clarifying question. The
Yes, ma'am.
engineer, because I did not read the engineering's plans. Is it for 72 or is it for 82? Seems like you would build to maximum capacity at 82 in order to scale up, because maybe you end up with extra cabins because your employees don't need to live on site. And I'm not opposed to that. I'm just saying, like, if it's all about the system design, it's still going to be, there's a maximum number of campsites, there's a maximum number of cabins, and there's a maximum number of employees based on whatever that capacity is. Maybe they're living in the cabins, maybe they're not. So isn't it 82?
no, because 1 and 2 specifically cap guests and employees inclusive at 40 and 32 respectively. So that would be 72. Now, if it were me, I would build in some additional capacity for my wastewater system, just to make sure it wasn't ever bumping up against its capacity, as long as I was following the rules.
I believe they have.
Does that, Marjo, does that clarify things?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Moving on, number 4, the campground is for guests and employees of Aspire Tours only. Furthermore, the campground is not open to the general public. Reference relevant code sections. Any issues with number 4? All right, number 5, no occupancy of any RVs in the commercial area is allowed. If Aspire Tours customers arrive in their RVs, van, or similar, they are required to rent a cabin or campsite. Two questions. In the commercial area, is that as differentiated from the agricultural area or the residential area for the home at the top of the property? And then also, I think maybe some clarification that if they show up, not only are they required to rent a cabin or campsite, but that's what they need to use in lieu of their RV.
Is that a rhetorical question, Anderson? Are you going to pose a question to the rest of us?
My, okay, non-rhetorical question number one. Why are we designating commercial area? Is it on the property as a whole or just in the area where the guests are?
I think they have a private residence, so it's clearly differentiating between the house and the business,
Okay.
would be my guess.
Yes, that's
Um,
correct.
More
Was
importantly,
was
there's a
there
bunch of
some-
hands up.
Should there be a finding that says that the guest area is the commercial area and but there is also a private residence on the property to differentiate between the two? And I noticed that Mr. Stein, who is the engineer, is on the line with his hand raised. Sir, I really appreciate you being here, but public comment has been closed. And I'm reluctant to open it even for a limited purpose. For the sole reason that there will then be a flood of other people that feel justified in being heard. So thank you for your willingness to help us with this, but I think we got to do it on our own. You know what, Paul, you have your hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Can we just clean this up and say no occupancy of any RVs? Because not only will guests be coming with RVs, but occasionally I've known guides and staff in Chaffey County to have their own RVs. So I think simply no occupancy of any RVs in the commercial area if we are required to differentiate between Spire Tours proper and the private residence.
Come on, Paul, a guide would never just crash in his van.
No,
Never, ever would that happen. I agree with you, sir. I think there's unnecessary redundancy.
Can I offer a
Margo?
clarifying point to that? One, just a legal point of clarification and whether we can impose restrictions on a private residence, hence the commercial component. So perhaps it should say no occupancy of any RVs in the commercial areas is allowed by employees or guests. I do have some concern with RVs being driven down that road. So if they arrive in their RV, yes, they're required to rent a cabin or campsite, but I think there needs to be some discussion here on whether RVs are appropriate on site at all.
well, therein lies the flaw to the entire van-based transportation plan.
Well, a Sprinter is a lot different than
No. What I'm saying is there's no off-site parking and or transfer area for guests who show up in their RVs.
I
I
thought they
mean,
had that worked out. Is that being phased out? They currently have a staging area.
I was not aware of that.
Anyhow, language recommendation would then be if Aspire Tour customers arrive in a personal RV, I'm all right with vans. I mean, a van's a car, but the RV in particular, it has to be met offsite. I don't think it's inappropriate to store them on site. And I'm posing that as a question for discussion.
You're saying you do not believe it's inappropriate to park RVs on site?
I'm saying I think it's inappropriate to have RVs accessing this site, and we can put some width, length, whatever. I'm differentiating an RV, an actual RV from other vehicle types.
I mean, we already have 22-foot long, 14 passenger vans coming on the property.
Width is extremely different in an RV than a Sprinter van.
You said width?
Yeah,
Okay,
like
yeah.
we're
I'm
talking
aware-
about
I'm
an
aware-
RV. Like we all know what an RV is, not a passenger van.
I know, but you said width and length. So I was suggesting that it certainly not be anything less than, 25 feet. And then width, I would think, 8 feet. That's about the maximum width for a dually trailer.
It's all done by class, right? Like this is so out of my wheelhouse. I'm a planner, not a tour guide. Is
Well,
it
we can-
sufficient to simply say recreational vehicles are not allowed on site for use?
No,
For parking or for camping?
I think I have concerns about the nature and basis for the restriction about what type of vehicles their guests can drive on the property. I think we can put dimensional restrictions, and I think that's entirely appropriate. But if we start saying you can drive a Class A, but, a Class A or a Class B, or a Class B or a Class C, but not a Super C and not a Class A,
yeah,
like and what about trailers then? What about non-RV trailers? If some family rolls in with their, 6-door Ford Excursion and a trailer full of dirt bikes, which we had pull into Salida River Adventures this summer. That whole setup was nearly 40 feet long. But that's not an RV. That's just a giant truck and a trailer full of bikes. So I think we put length and appropriate length and width restrictions. And say, no RVs or vehicles can be, has it been?
Exceed, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that they can't, no occupancy of any RVs or other vehicles in the commercial area is allowed. period. And
Mr.
then, hang on, Paul, as then a second, we could, if it's appropriate, put a dimensional restriction on the vehicles that are there. Although I'm a little concerned about that, because this is rural property.
Yeah.
And, somebody rolls in with a horse trailer or whatever. I recognize this limited impact review. I recognize that this is in some ways a departure from the way other adjacent properties are being used. But that doesn't give us license to just start throwing restrictions up on the property. for uses that would otherwise be appropriate in the rural zone. Guarantee you, there are some big trailers and RVs and stuff parked on nearby neighboring properties.
I don't necessarily agree with that wholeheartedly because the entire part of looking at a campground is setting up the appropriate uses based on property size. And, yeah, if someone rolls in with their fun hauler and, I don't know how big, let's divert this back to staff. How large is the parking space for each individual cabin? That's the accommodating structure. But we're also trying to mitigate road impacts, if you recall.
Yeah,
That's why they have vans.
the parking spots are for cars. They're limited to probably the 25-foot that would accommodate a pickup, extended cab pickup. But not, it doesn't really accommodate RVs, so.
All right. Greg has advised me that further down on the page, we haven't gotten there yet, but it says that all guest vehicles are required to be parked in parking area, I assume associated with either a cabin or a campsite. So if we wanted to say that any guest vehicles have to fit in the designated parking areas.
That
And
works
we-
for me.
And then we're just telling people what the dimensional restrictions are based on the accommodations. If a family rolls in a big old truck with a big old, I say big trailer, a 20-foot truck with a 20-foot trailer, and there are 2 spots in front of that cabin, well, they can unhook and park the trailer in one and the truck in the other, and we're good. As long as the parking spots accommodate those. I think we're trying to nitpick. And I don't think it's appropriate.
Mr.
Paul, go
Chairman,
ahead.
wasn't the whole point of 0.5 was to help manage and impact on the water and wastewater system, that we didn't want additional overnight guests in RVs. I think we have to be very, very careful going down the slippery slope of figuring out what vehicle is allowed and what vehicle is not based upon size. Because as several of us have pointed out, it is a rural zone. And a 4-door pickup hauling a trailer full of pipe is going to be real big too. So I would caution the commission from getting into figuring out what capacity of the applicant's parking area is. If they are losing paying parking spaces to trailers, they'll take care of it. I thought our concern was water and wastewater.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think the first sentence of number 5 should stand alone.
Mm-hmm.
I would delete the second sentence of number 5 and then allow the vehicle size issue to be addressed by the requirement of parking at, all vehicles have to be in the parking space. And if they exceed that, then that's on Aspire Tourist to tell their people to go to park that somewhere else, maybe up at their primary location. If it's a trailer or something like that.
Paul is correct. The point of that is not to allow any additional that's not accounted for in the water and septic design. So this is specifically that people can show up in their RVs if they're driving around for that, but they can't stay in them because that would then increase the number of people staying on the property.
And if there are no, okay. Yeah, if there are no hookups, then they're not contributing to the draw or capacity issues. But yeah. Betsy, go ahead and delete from the word if through RV. All right, and then we'll see what that language about parking is further down. All right, campsites and camp cabins shall not be rented as short-term rentals. And then the continuation of number 6 would be campsites and camp cabins shall only be rented to customers of Aspire Tours. And short-term rentals is capitalized, so that is a defined term. So I don't think we need to clarify anything else about that. Quiet hours?
Quick clarification on language, just to make sure it's not an issue. Is it rented? Are these being rented to employees? So is it customers and employees?
I guess the employees wouldn't be renting them,
Okay,
would have that as part of their
Well, then
benefits, but
we should say customers and employees
Yeah,
of Aspire Tours.
campsites and camp cabins should only be used by customers and employees. Will take care of that. Used or occupied, delete rented.
Yeah, that's good call. All right. Quiet hours or has been tentatively deleted? Is it?
I'm
what's
sorry
the-
that does
that?
appear to be an error.
Okay,
Can you, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any discussion of the quiet hours? All right. Number 8. Campsites and camp cabins to be rented to Aspire Tours guests, but will not, that's already been addressed by number 6.
yeah, that,
Okay. No firewood cutting is allowed on any part of the Aspire Tours property. References the sections. I assume that includes the non-commercial part because it's all one parcel. And we designated a different, or we differentiated on a previous condition, but not on this one. Owner may clean up trees and vegetation in accordance with best management practices from agencies such as the Corps and or the Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area, which I
Like
believe
to-
they've already started doing.
I'd like to propose an amendment to that one for
Yes,
consideration.
ma'am.
I'm unaware that AHRA has any best practices available for the public to follow. And I think what we primarily need to consider with this site is maintaining a vegetation buffer along the river that serves as both bank stabilization, erosion control, and water quality mitigation. And I think we should include in this that that it says something to the effect of the owner may clean up trees and vegetation. It's a fairly large area, so I get that. But either add a period after in accordance with best management practices and then include the 50-foot buffer adjacent to the river of the riparian corridor will not be removed. Minus, an access point or something. And I mean that for consideration of everyone, but I think that's primarily the way to protect the water quality along the river there. That is the management best practice.
Can you repeat that, Marjo, for Betsy?
Let's see. A 50-foot riparian buffer
Shall be maintained.
shall be maintained along the Arkansas River bank. I mean, just try again.
Yes, please, Marjo, will you please
Yeah,
repeat
so a
that? Thank you.
50-foot riparian vegetation buffer
Riparian. There's my guess at that word. Uh-huh.
shall be maintained along the Arkansas River bank. With allowance for, I don't know, an access point, or I don't know what to call it. An access point. Hopefully by next year, this will just be everybody and it won't need to be a condition.
All right, 50-foot riparian buffer shall be maintained along the Arkansas River bank. There should be a comma after bank. With allowance for, is it just one access point?
I don't know. I mean, there needs to be continuity in the riparian corridor. But it doesn't, I mean, if you go along it now where there's fishing versus rafts, there's multiple access points, but they're very narrow. A couple people wide. A boat ramp's like 35 feet
Yeah.
inappropriately. And then everyone else is mowing it down. So, I'm fine with fishing access points or whatever you want to call it and not saying one, but.
And they've got that lower tier area that has historically been used as kind of a, picnic, campfire, camping area already. But I don't know that you ever see vehicles down there. It's just, people just carry their stuff down.
There's not a boat access on this, but
No, there's not.
They did put in a
Hmm,
crossing of the irrigation ditch down to that.
That's right.
So
But
they do have an access point already.
and I'm not talking about driving down access. I'm talking about within a contiguous buffer, because the willows will come back regardless of whether they've taken it down, they'll eventually come back. That does not continue to get removed.
Do you want? to
Whether
add
there's
in
one
a-
access along the river, or 2 accesses along the river, I don't really care.
Do you want? to put it
With
in
allowances for guest access to the river itself. I don't care how you phrase it. The point is, don't
pedestrian
go down the
access?
bank.
Okay, yeah.
Marjo, we also have Joanne and Thomas have their hands up.
Yep, I'm done.
Okay, Joanne, go ahead, ma'am. And then Thomas, you're next.
Commissioner Allen, you're muted.
Okay, thank you, Betsy. So on number 7, should we say local time, because there is Mountain Daylight Time?
About just mountain time.
Sure. That's it for me for this.
Okay, Thomas, what you got?
On number 8, firewood cutting, it says, and I've seen in other parks and wild areas that it says no firewood cutting or gathering. Is that what we want here?
Good point, Thomas.
We probably do want that in the riparian area anyway. Are we up to number 10?
Well, I thought there was some discussion about the collection of firewood.
Okay,
Were we making that change?
I see it as changed.
yeah.
Okay, all right, number 10, fire bans shall be posted and adhered to as announced by Chaffey County Sheriff's Office. Any issues with that? Okay, hearing none. Aspire tourists shall provide firewood for use at the fire pits. Additionally, guests are prohibited from bringing their own firewood. Any issues with that? All right. The applicant shall post the following required signs: no use of the irrigation ditch by guests, no trespassing at property boundaries, private land past the Aspire Tourist property. Firewood cutting, we should say gathering, cutting and gathering on the property is prohibited. No fires are permitted anywhere on the commercial portion of the property outside the 2 designated fire rings. Are there, well, I assume this means outdoor fires. Oh, I don't know if the cabins have wood stoves or fireplaces or anything like that. Any permanent furniture or development in the 100-year floodplain shall require a floodplain development permit and may also require an Army Corps of Engineers permit. Any issues with that? All right. Any construction proposed within 40 feet of the Williams and Hammond irrigation ditch or within 100 feet of the Arkansas River shall have erosion and sedimentation controls installed before the start of construction. Am I correct that that's already a requirement for construction in the county near the Ark?
It is, but it's, if it's a condition of approval, then it's easier for staff to track it.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting it doesn't belong here. I'm just making sure it's consistent with the already existing requirements.
Yes, it is.
Weddings and community events are prohibited as part of this limited impact review. Separate permitting reviews and approvals are required for weddings or other community events. Am I correct that they would apply for a special event permit just like any other landowner?
Yes, I believe it's the, how that would work.
Okay. All right, Betsy, would you mind scrolling down a bit? Thank you. Number 17, applicant will comply with the special event permitting requirements outlined in the land use code, section 4.2.6. Okay, well, that answered my question. No amplified music is allowed outdoors without appropriate permitting.
Can we clarify
Yes.
appropriate permitting?
was
Isn't
just
that, wouldn't
thinking I
that
was-
be,
Go ahead, Marjo.
I'm not recalling the specific section, so I'm just asking for a clarification of appropriate, like, is that a new special use permit or is there some other process there?
I think it would be dependent on what would be proposed. So if they're going to do special events, then they would have to meet those requirements. A lot of the reason for putting that in is that amplified music is probably one of the largest reasons for noise complaints that we get.
So would, I concur. So, and again, just without appropriate permitting is relatively vague, whereas like without review by planning department, like what would be a more specific, clear condition?
The amplified music guidelines and regs in this county are currently very vague, to answer your concern, Margot. And they're in the pipeline, but right now they're not really helpful to us.
Okay, I'm just trying to get around the vagueness of appropriate.
Mhm.
Why don't we just say no amplified music is allowed outdoors?
Yep.
Without permit issued by Chaffey County.
Yeah, but.
This is John Rorta. We don't issue permits. We would review the land use for compliance with the portion of the land use code that allows special events. And it would be in compliance with Colorado revised statutes for the noise limits. So perhaps,
Without county review.
there, Marjo,
Without county.
that is very, that is to the point.
Right. All right, so strike the appropriate permitting for and replace with without county review.
Yes, sir.
Agreed. That's a good change.
Okay. Number 19, all trail construction shall be set back. That should be 2 words. A minimum of 25 feet from property lines to minimize impact on adjacent properties. Okay. Floodplain development permits may be required based on consultation with the Chaffey County Floodplain Administrator.
And that seems redundant with 14.
Yeah,
So if they can either be combined, or I don't know whether you're thinking even on this development permit that it will require a review, but they're redundant to me.
Can you scroll up just enough so ideally, we can see 14 and 20? There we go. Oh, can we maybe go one line up and then we'll get it? Oh, any permanent furniture or development in the 100-year floodplain shall. All right, let's try to get 14 at the top of the page and 20 at the bottom of the page so we can see them both. There we go. Stop. Okay. All right, shall require a floodplain development permit and may also require an Army Corps of Engineers permit. And then 20 says floodplain development permits may be required based on consultation with the Chaffey County Floodplain Administrator. My gut reaction is that we could say shall require, in 14, we could say, don't change anything yet, please, Betsy. And don't, can you scroll back up, please, or back down, there we go. All right. We could say, don't change anything yet, please. We could say, shall require a floodplain development permit from the Chaffey County Floodplain Administrator, and any such furniture or development may also require an Army Corps of Engineers permit. And then we can delete condition number 20. Does that?
Not exactly, but I think that regardless of, can I clarify with John, who I think is our floodplain administrator? Is there a reason that it's in here twice? Because they actually do have some different citations as well.
May I please suggest that floodplain development permits for any future improvements on number 20.
So you're saying modify, you broke up a little bit to say floodplain development. Stop moving for a second. Floodplain develop, please, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Kurgus, I am suggesting we modify number 20 to say floodplain development permits for any future improvements.
Yep, maybe required. And then how does that just, again, I'm not looking at the code, so consultation with county floodplain administrator and potentially Army Corps of Engineer, does that capture it?
Actually, if they consult with the Chaffey County Floodplain Administrator, that floodplain administrator, me, does have authority to tell these folks they need to consult with the Army Corps of Engineers.
All right, so that's all inclusive, and then we can delete number 14, is that?
Well, it is a little bit redundant, but our real emphasis here is to make sure that if they are doing any development of the floodplain, that they need to obtain permits. So yes, perhaps we could go ahead and delete 14 in lieu of adding a little bit more to item 20.
Okay. So I would recommend then deleting 14 and then adding to 20. Floodplain development permits may be required for any additional future improvements. I mean, it almost seems simpler to just to say any future improvements. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
So, but see, there's now after, in the first sentence where it says improve after any, that should say, that should be deleted. Nope, stop. May be required for any
improvements
now delete the other future improvements. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Marjo.
And did we get rid of
Alrighty.
14?
And you said then get rid of 14? Yep.
No. It's enough
Agreed.
conditions. If we can consolidate, it's a good thing.
All right, so that was 20, now new number 19 has been addressed. So 20, no parking shall be allowed outside of the established parking areas. I don't necessarily think there's anything else we need to say about that. They set up the parking area, and how they use it is up to them. They've got people to accommodate both guests and employees. Why the change to not include takeouts at the property? Because there's not a boat ramp, and that's right at the top of kind of a, well, it's easy, you could take out there, but launching from there would be problematic given the shape of the rapids moving downriver from there.
Right, I think that we're discussing the taking out part as being doable, but we don't want raft trips launched, so then it says in red below there, no commercial raft trips shall be launched at the property.
Right?
Yeah, it's the taking out that isn't really the problem.
Christine, I'm sorry, can you explain that why there is less impact with a takeout on that property than a launch on that property? It seems to be impacting the same zone. There is no hardened ramp there, so I don't understand the logic.
So they do actually have, they have installed a gravel drive down to the river. What we expect to happen is that they would launch farther upstream. And it wouldn't be daily raft trips, it's their customers. And as they float by, if some of the people are tired and don't want to go all the way down and get rafted back or shuttled back up to the property, then they can do that. Doesn't seem like everyone on the trip would get out to go back to the cabins or to their campsites. So these commercial
But are
raft
you gonna be
trips,
moving boats up and down the bank?
they might, be. Yes.
So again,
So
I
if
don't
you're
understand.
Up the bank,
I don't understand the impact on the bank being any less between launching and taking out on a regular basis.
Right, and that would be certainly up to the planning commission if you want to leave that in there.
I would leave it in without modification would be my recommendation.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning. For two reasons. One, I agree with Paul about the traffic, and what I would say is being very familiar with that particular section of river and the rapid that sits just below the property, and that lower tier of the property right by the river. If you're letting people out, that means you've got to move over to river left to get them out. But your best line and your unobstructed line into the rapid is about midstream or a little to the right of it. And there are a bunch of rocks that, except at high water in late May, early June, you're not gonna be able to clear with a loaded commercial raft, river left. So I think it's unrealistic to say we can drop people off if they don't want to continue on down into town or to wherever. Because then you're gonna be out of position, you're gonna have a problem. Now, I know that, you know, the quality of the rafting experience is not our concern. But as a boater and a guide, I think that would be exceptionally problematic. And I agree with Paul about the usage. You know, if all they're doing is taking out there, maybe that's not a problem, but then we've still got, unless the guides are gonna hand carry boats up, or guides and customers gonna hand carry boats up, then we still got trucks coming up and down that gravel path.
Fine, question. It's my understanding that we are not allowing trucks, trailers, et cetera, to use what you're now saying they have an existing boat ramp that's been placed.
So, not a boat ramp, just a path from the upper level of the property down to that lower tier.
Okay. So there's
But I
not
don't think
currently,
Think
not
of the
currently a boat, I mean, a bunch of private landowners are putting their own private boat chutes on, so I'm just making sure they don't have their own boat ramp constructed already, since the county does not yet regulate that.
I paddled past there at the end of the season
Okay,
at very low water, and there was no change in the bank itself. Now, obviously, a lot can happen between September and January.
okay,
but-
so if that's the case, if there's not yet a boat chute, then yes, it would cause long-term degradation every time a raft company comes up and docks. So we either make it explicit what is permitted versus just really vaguely, they won't be launched there, because that then means, yeah, you could put a takeout. So it's either we completely prohibit river access, which, you know, I don't know, like, maybe they
Yeah,
could,
no.
but let's put some standards around then the protection of the banks, because that's where the county is moving anyway. And
let-
it would be a limitation on the width of the actual potential landing area that would be their own private boat access. And then back where I mentioned the riparian vegetation, that access would be limited to that one large cut.
Yeah, let me, Bill's had his hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so the revised language would not prohibit the large, from what I can tell, a school bus and a trailer from going down there. And once they remove the raft from the river, then what are they gonna do? Where are they gonna go? How are they gonna get out of there? That's a big, big problem to me. I thought it was very clear that this was not a commercial raft put in takeout. I thought that was an understanding. That was my understanding anyway. And so I agree. And also I underscore what Paul said about the whole thing. So I think we should leave number 21 in as it was originally written.
I would agree with you, Bill.
I agree.
Paul, you had your hand, or somebody else had their hand up. I see John has his hand up. Go ahead, John.
The table 2.2 does call for a limited impact review for a commercial boat launch site in the rural zone. And so that would be a separate application to determine whether or not this could be permitted.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I think, Paul, do you have something to add, sir?
Yeah, I want to remind commissioners that the applicant stated on a couple times that they had no intention of launching or taking out from this property. And that was also a concern of the neighbors, speaking to increased traffic on 190W. If there was to be launches and takeouts at this point. So I think, again, go back to 21 as it was written, no launches or takeouts, and let's move on.
There are a whole host of reasons just to leave 21 the way it was. So Betsy, if you would make that happen. All right. 22, applicant shall use high bear aware practices. Secured food storage areas. Installation of round knobs on exterior doors. Oh, chuckling because a friend of mine's cabin just got visited. Centralized fenced bear-proof trash containers and central cooking areas. Any issues with that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
am I correct that none of this impacts any future agricultural use?
No, number 22 specifically, or these conditions in general?
These conditions in general.
I mean, my understanding is that they have an agricultural use on a portion of the property that is open for, I guess, pedestrian traffic, but not generally part of what we would consider the commercial area.
Well,
I'm
the
looking
point of
for
my,
ag-
the
Take
point of my
that.
question is if we're delineating safe bear practices based upon experience in Alaska, chickens and other poultry need to be mentioned specifically and protected if we're worried about bears.
Well, there was a direct recommendation from CPW.
Okay, but I'm saying in 22 says nothing about domestic fowl. And is it, do we need to mention it, or would that be a different application? I guess is what my question is.
Commissioners, this is John Rorta. May I please offer that agricultural uses are a permitted use in all zones in the county?
Thanks,
Yeah,
Jeff.
I don't think agricultural practices kind of necessarily falls within the purview of our limited impact review for this property. If they, lose their chickens to a coyote, well, then I guess they'll install better protection for their fowl. And that doesn't necessarily present the same problem as trash and food and that sort of thing. All right, any other issues with number 22? All right, number 23, any additional uses, development of, changes to, or expansion beyond this limited impact review shall require additional permitting and approval pursuant to the land use code. Seems appropriate. All right. Any changes to or concerns about number 23 as written?
Before we dive into zoning compliance for the building permit, can we stay in subdivision regulations for a moment? Because I feel like there's two key issues that have not been resolved or included in this set of conditions that are of concern to me and I think require and warrant some discussion. In our last meeting, the two primary issues that I flagged were verification of water adequacy for the commercial well. We went through a lot on the water, and it really comes down to the viability of the commercial well which is only proven through a pump test. And secondly, the road, which is remarkably absent from this discussion. Like, I think the conditions, you've done a really good job on these. But we didn't make any progress off of our last discussion on how to mitigate increases to traffic, even though we're not meeting any certain thresholds. This is going beyond sort of the statutes themselves, or our regulations themselves, which are, lackluster, and more to the carrying capacity of the road as a whole, particularly around the one Blind Hill. And I feel like we don't have anything in here to those 2 points under subdivision approval in general. And I'm just curious whether those are still issues for others. Like, I have some language I could propose. But the next set of conditions are really standard.
Right, so the water adequacy, the applicant has, I believe they've installed a well, and I don't think they have their water testing finalized. So they did not want to give us that information until it's complete, which is fine. I thought there were conditions in that zoning compliance about giving us that information before a building permit would be issued. On the roads also, okay,
Let's just stay on the water and then we'll deal
Yep.
with the roads. The state statutes, in the way that they read, is that water adequacy will be proven prior to approval of the subdivision, not at building permit. For which, in some ways, they've met the requirements of providing a water study that gets to the aquifer and sufficiency of the aquifer, but they've not yet proven the sufficiency of the well. Like, we could make it, the whole thing is contingent on, if you don't have an adequate commercial well, clearly the whole development will fall apart. But at some point, I think that we need demonstration of proof of well adequacy well before we start moving a lot of dirt around, given the high variability of flow rates within this specific geographic area, which is unique to other parts of Chaffey County. And I am somewhat uncomfortable with saying we can wait until you're getting ready to build. It is not that difficult to do it as a contingent well test as approval for approval. That's actually quite common in most other counties, and something I'd like to put on the table for everybody for discussion. And then the roads, you can also give me county's thinking on that one.
okay. So since both, I'm sorry, Daniel, I just wanted to address the roads real quick. The Peak View subdivision is also going through at the same time. And they did receive preliminary plan approval with the requirement that the applicants would work with staff for creating some traffic calming. We haven't actually gotten to that point yet. I think just reducing the problem with the hill would make people go faster. And I don't know if that's really the best thing for the neighborhood. So we are still working on that road issue. And Peak View has come in recently, so we're gonna probably get on that as a higher priority. But we do expect staff to come up with traffic calming ideas for that to work.
Then yeah, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, but I'd like to see that reflected as a condition of approval, that the application's final approval is dependent upon, county planning department, county manager, road and bridge, legal, BOCC, whoever it all needs to be in a room, and potentially Peak View to come to an agreed upon mitigation strategy within some determined time limited period. 3 months. I don't care if it's a phased plan over the next 10 years. But I'd like to see that reflected in these conditions.
This is Daniel.
Further comments?
Sorry to really jump in here. I believe Mr. Stein does have some information on pump well data. It was disclosed late to legal about that. Concerning the road, I think Peak View, the county commissioners did have a hearty discussion about the road. And I believe some of the neighborhood was there. The commissioners are trying to figure out a way to improve the hill section. It does involve the ditch and whether or not the ditch is going to allow us to mitigate it with little or more, not having to improve the ditch on the culvert there. So I think Commissioner Felt was going to talk to the ditch company, do a walkabout with Mark out there, and see kind of where we need to go from there. I believe there was also questions about right of way, how much right of way we do have there, and looking at that. But I think this is on the radar of both the road and bridge supervisor and county commissioners to resolve. And it's just a time frame of how they do it.
So that's great, but those are unresolved issues that you're currently asking the Planning Commission to approve a development for. And I just want to see some reflected accountability that it doesn't just get dismissed. And I would feel really uncomfortable approving this application, despite the fact that I really think you've done a tremendous job. The applicant has done a good job, but there are these underlying, maybe it'll get resolved, just approve it tonight and we'll let you know. I'm not comfortable with that. So I would like us to come up with some appropriate language. If everyone else is fine with it, I will move on. But I am uncomfortable approving it without some clarity around how it gets done, because Chaffey County could just as easily go, we tried, and that would be the end of it. And we've approved something without any mitigation.
I agree.
Yeah, I understand we don't hold any sway over the county commissioners, but and I know we scheduled this for a date certain, but and without trying to lay blame anywhere, it concerns me that we have issues that are fundamental to our ability to evaluate this application, and issues that very clearly over the past, year and a half, almost 2 years that we've been chewing on this, we're clear from members of the public who have graced us with their opinions and input. None of this is new. And so that we are trying to finalize this and it's on the agenda when at least staff knew that there were fundamental issues as yet unresolved, is both frustrating and concerning. And I just I know we all want to be done with this, but I think Marjo's hit the nail on the head. I don't know, and I'm throwing up in my mouth a little bit just saying it. I don't know that we can deal with this tonight if we have these things hanging over our heads. And it's not because of anybody's intentional efforts to delay or obfuscate. It's that the right hand and the left hand aren't communicating about issues that are known to be fundamental to the questions before us tonight. And I loathe saying it, but I can't see any way that we can do our due diligence and our duty to the citizens of this county and to the county without answers to those questions.
So just to clarify, I think both of those can easily be submitted without us needing to deliberate on them by making conditions that say final approval is dependent upon the submission of this material, just like any of these other submissions. And that is two of the conditions. And one of them, and I'm typing these into the chat so that someone can show them to all of you, so we don't need to wordsmith painfully. So the drawback of not having access to the chat. And the first condition would be a well test will be submitted proving adequate water volume for a commercial well. And whether that's, before a massive amount of dirt or before final approval or before any occupancy, whatever, I don't care the timing of it as long as it's proven. And then the second, if you give me a second, I'll type it, but it would similarly address the resolution of the road. And that could be within 90 days, within 6 months, the operation of this particular development is not occurring immediately. So there's phasing of this anyhow. And I think resolving the long-term road issues is an internal mediation between multiple applicants in the county, and it needs to be completed. It does not need to come back to us as long as agreement is made. Because I think we all know what the issue is. It's just what's the appropriate mitigation measure that's acceptable to all parties. I don't need to be involved in that. I just want to make sure that we're accountable to it within this application as part of the agreement.
Okay,
And just a second, and I'll type what could be conditions, and then Joanne has her hand up, and I'll shut up for a minute.
okay, Joanne, what do you have?
Marjo spoke eloquently to my thoughts on it, and I think I don't need any further comment at this time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Why don't we just sit tight for a moment while Marjo comes up with
Proceed
some-
through the easy ones while I'm typing.
All right. So we'll be back to that. All right, let's start with number 1 in part 2. The following shall be submitted to Development Services for review and approval before the building permit is issued. 1, a quote, typical detail of bear-proof trash containers with information on how often they will be emptied and the relevant code sections. A typical detail of the proposed downward facing or shielded lighting and the relevant code section. Should we say in compliance with the Dark Skies Initiative? Or is that referenced in 718?
Commissioner, John Orta, may I suggest that in compliance with the land use code?
Yes, sir. Well, we've referenced the code section, so. All right, a copy of the final site plan, including locations of benches, gathering spaces, picnic areas, trails, and ditch crossings. And Article 3 plus 2 sections in Article 7. Any issues with number 3? All right. Number 4. Copy of the CDPHE approval for non-community water treatment system shall be included with the building permit for application for phase 1. On-site wastewater treatment system designs by a licensed Colorado professional engineer based on the final development proposal, including food service calculations. Any issues with that? All right. Number 6. Engineered plans prepared by a licensed Colorado professional engineer shall be submitted for construction. I think that should say prior to construction. There we go. Construction of the access road to meet low volume road and fire protection standards. Culvert sizing for the access road, trails, parking, and an erosion sedimentation control plan. No drainage is allowed to be channeled to the Williams and Ham ditch or to the Arkansas River. Should that be a separate condition?
So the point of that part was that when they design the low volume road, they can't just put roadside ditches on it.
Right.
Expect it to run downhill, which would be into the ditch.
Right. All right, well, let's just keep it there. All right, number 7, any issues with 6 as written? Okay. Number 7, a drainage report prepared by a licensed Colorado professional engineer shall be submitted for review and approval by the county engineer. All right. Any issues with number 7? Okay, assigned development agreement and maintenance covenant for the access road and commercial improvements. Just for consistency's sake, in some of these, we're simply identifying them, and in some, we're saying they have to be submitted.
I've been writing those down, and I think we should remove the shall be submitted because it's listed up at the top of the section.
All right, well, let's,
So it's
so
no,
number 4 is okay because it's included with the building permit application for phase 1. I don't think that's an issue. On number 6. Just delete.
Shall be submitted.
Oh, you know what? In that case, shall be submitted is,
Deleted. Fine.
relates to the prior, not to. So put it back in there. Sorry, shall be submitted. Because that's saying what needs to happen prior to, when it needs to happen. Not what needs to happen. Does that make sense? And then, but 7, we could delete, shall be submitted for review and approval by the county engineer. Am I correct? I think we can just delete everything after Colorado PE, except the section identifier.
it does need to be reviewed and approved by the county engineer, not just submitted. If you could leave.
Okay. That works. Just leave, just like that. Because it still gets submitted to building, to development services, who then forwards it to the county engineer for review and approval,
Yes,
right?
yes.
All right, a signed development agreement and maintenance covenant for the access road and commercial improvements. Seems appropriate. Number 9, a copy of the approved commercial driveway permit and the appropriate sections. Anything else? Oh, of course there is. All right, road construction permit obtained through the Development Services Department. Copy of the approved CDOT access permit. Is there a CDOT access permit onto a low volume road?
They have applied for the CDOT access permit because County Road 190 is a dead end. And it,
Right,
has
okay,
a new development on there.
okay. So technically, it's the access onto 291 because it's a
Yes.
dead end road, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, sorry. Copy the signed weed management plan with proof that the $8,000 escrow fee has been paid. Copy of Chaffey County Fire Protection District approval for participation in a cost sharing agreement with other developers for a shared fire cistern that meets the requirements for proposed subdivisions on County Road 190W or County Road 190E, or pay a fee in lieu. Any issues with that? All right. Copy of the camp rules that include noise limits, quiet hours, long-term camping, campground host duties, campfire rules, bear aware practices, and other mitigation measures. Anything need to be added to that list? All right. 15, an approved food service license from Chaffey County Environmental Health or documentation that a permit is not required shall be submitted to the Development Services Department.
We could remove the last phrase on that.
Yeah, just delete everything after required.
Yep.
Okay. 16, copy of the recorded access and maintenance easement agreement between Williams and Ham Ditch Company and Catherine Troxler. Shall delete everything beginning with shall be. And put a period after Ms. Troxler's name. There we go. Anything else? Betsy, is that it? Is that the last one? Well, for goodness sake, let's save it before
Yep.
we. All right, Marjo, how goes your wordsmithing?
I submitted it via the chat.
Okay,
Chairman, I have it.
okay. Why don't you just go ahead and put it in there as you have it, and then we'll tweak it if need be. Mango chili, homemade in Martha. There's nothing else. It's just so better. Those were the Saturdays. Saturdays. Making storage forever.
Sorry, I thought you'd just be able to cut and paste.
Betsy, I sent it to you in the chat if you want to copy it from there.
Whoa. All righty then.
All right. All right, so, oh, hang on. All right, 24, a well test will be submitted, providing adequate water volume for a commercial well. I would say shall be submitted instead of will. Proving adequate water volume for a commercial well. Any other changes to that?
Do we have a responsibility to cite where the parameters for this test can be found?
Marjo or staff?
I mean, commercial wells have volumes set by one, it has to reach be able to pump capacity, and yeah, there's plenty of specs out there for it through.
Do we need to cite it? Because if I recall, the statute says it's within our responsibility, but do we have to say what we will accept?
I don't know that we have, like, what's the maximum, has like a maximum of 35 or something, I forget what it is, but the engineer can, he'll review it.
Okay,
Like a commercial well versus a, like I think the max capacity for a commercial well is 35 gallons per minute, whereas for residential, it's a max of 15. And we saw well volumes as low as 3. And so I think what we're trying to determine is there's sufficient pressure pump capacity to serve the development.
I understand that, but since we've cited statutes and sections throughout this, is there a particular requirement we want to be met?
It'd be whatever the water adequacy section is. We don't have established standards within our specific code citing specific volume numbers, if you're wanting that. And it would be more based on an engineer's review of whether it's sufficient pressure, not requiring a cistern to serve the number of people.
Okay.
All right. Okay, anything else with 24? Then 25, the application for final approval is dependent upon the county planning department, county manager, roads and grid, that should be bridges, roads and bridges. Legal and BOCC and the applicant will. We got a dangling parenthetical.
I think it should go after BOCC. Does that make
That
sense?
sounds right.
Yes.
After the. All right, and BOCC, close parentheses. Just
We'd like BOCC in parentheses.
BOCC and then close the parentheses.
Oh, gotcha.
There we go.
Roger that. Thank
And
you.
the applicant will negotiate a satisfactory mitigation strategy for County Road 190. Should I say 190W?
No, sorry.
Where additional development pressures at Blind Hill create potentially hazardous traffic conditions. An agreed upon solution shall be negotiated in 90 to 120 days when phased implementation, depending that the last phrase doesn't make sense. Shall be negotiated in 90 to 120 days
with phased implementation.
okay, with phased implementation, depending on
Yeah.
mitigated solutions. And then a comma after implementation. And I wholeheartedly agree with the spirit of this condition and I appreciate what we're trying to accomplish. I think the wording is good. I guess my concern is I mean, we're only talking about this applicant in this limited impact review, but my concern is that the language that what we're setting up here with number 25 appears to put a burden solely on the applicant and the county, as opposed to other applicants along 190W. And that is inappropriate.
Well, again, the burden, it doesn't say who the burden's with. It's just saying that we will come to some mitigated agreement. I don't personally think it's purely the responsibility of any of the development out there at this point. But you can add, if you want, under all of the listed appropriate people, and any other necessary party determined by the county, which would open up how that gets negotiated. It's not
I
a
think
mess.
that adequately addresses my concern. Oh, no, don't delete anything inside that parenthetical, because those are the county entities. Get rid of the and right there that your cursor's next to and replace it with a comma. So the county, all those people, comma, the applicant, comma, after applicant. And then say, and any additional parties identified by the county.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Rorta. Respectfully, we do not have a county manager. We do have an administrator, and we do have a planning and zoning department. And so I would suggest replacing county manager with either county administrator or Chaffey County Planning and Zoning Department. Thank you.
All right, so replace manager with administrator. And then planning and zoning department. Would that just be development services?
That would include building, so I think it's planning and zoning.
Okay, thank you.
I would suggest planning and zoning and county county
Engineer.
and manager, or engineer. That would be appropriate.
Okay.
We've got some hands up.
All right, thank you. Joanne, go ahead, ma'am.
Thanks. I'm referring to number 25. And this, this condition is primarily regarding traffic, right? It isn't regarding the condition of the road or the degradation of the road or anything like that. Have I interpreted that correctly regarding only traffic? And
I don't think you have.
Well, I meant in general. So like if we're gonna get in, it creates hazard conditions. It doesn't say what the cause is. So, you know, the mitigation has to address not the traffic counts or the volumes, but the potentially hazardous conditions. So in a traffic assessment, for example, that did something other than just traffic counts, you would look at the road widths, the road design, the site views. Those would all contribute to traffic safety. So if that's inherent because I'm a planner and it needs to be clarified, feel free.
well, it just seems to me that we're really dealing with two issues. The infrastructure and then the actual movement of the traffic and the blind corners and the grade and the width of the road and all of that. So both need to be addressed. But the real cost to the county is going to be the degradation of its infrastructure by all that extra traffic.
Right. And
Does this address that?
it does, because it's saying the satisfactory mitigation strategy for County Road 190 West, where development pressures are creating safety concerns. If road degradation is contributing to that safety concern, then that should be part of what's mitigated. And whether that's, you know, that's not something that can be done immediately. That's why I'm saying it might need to be a phased implementation strategy over time with some short and long-term solutions.
Thanks,
and
Marjo.
I would just-
Appreciate that.
I would just say, you know, I would take exception to the saying all this extra traffic. We're talking about a limited use, limited access, seasonal campground. When this, 40-acre parcel could be turned into 22-acre lots with 10 times the traffic. Plus, we've already established that the people speeding on there and exceeding the safe operational limits of the road are the people who are already there. Not people who have commercial insurance concerns to operate within.
That might all be true, but we're putting additional development pressure on there, and I would feel the same for Peakview as I do for this, as I would if it were a 24-unit subdivision that we're approving development where we've not made satisfactory infrastructure investments. And I don't necessarily think it's solely the responsibility of the development community itself, but we're either set with making a decision where we say no new development until the road's mitigated, or we say development can occur there with acknowledgement that the county needs to address infrastructure insufficiencies within due time.
Well, it is my sincere hope that when the BOCC looks over this, that they take the hint and do whatever needs to be done to start addressing issues like that, instead of inappropriately and unduly burdening property owners, not just Ms. Troxler and not just whatever the other development is on 190W. But all property owners, because everybody's negatively affected by the poor conditions of the roads that have been allowed to exist here. Which I get is not necessarily on our agenda tonight. But we deal with this constantly, especially on this road. All right, anything else? Bill, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so let me frame this maybe a slightly different way. as a member of the planning commission, I feel like I'm being asked to do something that's sort of impossible to do. I'm being asked to approve something where a development where there's insufficient infrastructure that's not the responsibility of the developer. And so we're trying to nudge, beg, plead, whatever you want to call it, the county to deal with this, to do something about it. Because we feel uncomfortable approving this thing, given the current status of the road. So given that, I really appreciate what Marjo's suggesting here, and the language is great to really, say, hey, give us a break here. Let us, what are we supposed to do? The problem I have is the one word satisfactory mitigation strategy. It's 3 words, I realize, but so what we're talking about is it would be great if all these entities within the county and the applicant could come up with some kind of agreement. Let's say they don't. Let's say everybody agree, all the county people say the applicant should widen and pave the road or something like that. And the applicant goes, no, I don't want to do that. So who gets to decide? So in the end, the people who get to decide is the county. That's the authority, right? So, I think we can ask that they sit down with the applicant. But unless we define who gets to say what's satisfactory, we got a problem, in my view.
Yeah, so then maybe what you're saying is you don't want them to say satisfactory. Like if they don't come to agreement, if they weren't able to come to a satisfactory agreement, then it would not be approved. Like that's what's saying dependent upon. In
Right.
terms of what satisfactory mitigation might be, I think it's like, as someone who's a planner, I can lay out a whole course of what that will be over a 10-year period. And maybe there's a temporary solution that's a cost share with the development applicants, and then the long-term cost of the responsibility of the county. Will they come to that conclusion? I don't know. One would only hope. So if you want to define what satisfactory means for you, and put some of that in there as some of those conditions, I'm fine with that. I get it. Like we can just deny it outright. But I'm trying to find a solution that would at least, allow for a recognition that if the county policy is to be open for business, then they need to invest in the infrastructure that allows that to happen.
Right, and I completely agree with that. So here's what I think maybe we're saying, but we don't want to say it out loud, is that if the county, not the planning commission, but the commissioners, et cetera, if they think that this road is inadequate and there shouldn't be any development, then that's on them to stop it. It's not on us. So what I would do is I would just remove the applicant from this statement. Because it would be included in additional parties if that's who they wanted to talk to. But in the end, it's not up to the applicant to solve this problem. It's up to the county to solve this problem. And if the county, I very highly doubt that the county commission, et cetera, would say, no, there can't be any more development until this whole road thing is figured out. But what it does is it puts it on them and off us. So I would suggest that we remove the applicant, because I don't want to put the burden on the applicant. And they're not the only ones. It's Peakview. Now, and this is one of not a billion. This is one of many places that we're going to have to deal with that's going to have the same problem. And it shouldn't be on them to figure it out. If the county wants to say there won't be any development, down roads that don't meet this certain standard, then that's beyond really what the planning commission We don't have the authority to do that, number one.
Bill, I hear what you're saying, but I also think that including the applicant in the list in condition 25, I interpret that as not so much burdening them with participation in the process, but guaranteeing them the right to participate in the process. As any adjacent landowner would have the right to do. But also, one concern I do have about this that didn't occur to me at first, but we've spent a lot of time and we've acted in good faith. The applicant has acted in good faith. And I'm not suggesting necessarily that anybody on the commission, on the Board of County Commissioners would act in any way other than in good faith. But the way it's worded, they could simply shove this on the bottom of the pile and not do a thing. And this would be perpetually stymied through simple inaction.
But wouldn't inaction then make the development not be approved?
Yeah. Which I
Right.
think would, and I'm just going to say it, and legal can correct me if I'm wrong, but simply choosing not to address the issue and thereby doing it might open the county to liability. Since the county engineer and roads and bridges have already basically said, yeah, we're not fooling with that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we do have probably a solution that would occur sooner than the bottom of the pile. The Peak View subdivision has brought in their final plan, and one of the conditions of approval on that was that the county would work with, it would be the county engineer, planning, and road and bridge to come up with a solution, at least a immediate one, by traffic calming and not speed bumps, not rumble strips, something that is not going to irritate the neighbors, and it's going to slow down the traffic without a huge amount of money being put in. So we have a subdivision that's coming in for their final approval that the county is requiring staff to come up with solutions. So I think it's going to be a little bit more immediate than the bottom of the pile.
Is there a time frame on that requirement?
Well, it's going to be a part of this application, the Peak View subdivision application. So it's going to hearing. We do a 30-day notice, so probably a month and a half, 2 months.
All right. Okay, thank you, Christie. All right, is there anything else that we need to discuss? Does anybody have their hand up? All right. Commissioners, any other discussion of the proposed conditions or findings of fact?
No, thanks for reorganizing those. It was a lot easier to do that way.
Yeah, thank you very much to staff for all of their hard work in dealing with this. And thanks to my fellow commissioners for their patience and diligence in working through this complex set of issues. All right, is there a motion regarding what we've accomplished tonight?
Before a motion is made, we have a suggestion for probably the end of the motion, but it would be that the Planning Commission directs County Attorney's Office to prepare a notice of decision by February 1st, 2022.
Okay, well then, with that suggestion, I, as the chair, will go ahead and make that motion. I move to approve the Aspire Tours Limited Impact Review, subject to the conditions of approval and in the event, well, and direct the county attorney's office to prepare a notice of decision not later than February 1st, 2022.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Rauschke. Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion of the motion? All right, hearing none, then I will, because the chat function is a little unwieldy, we'll just do a roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I can't get my buttons going fast enough, my hand up and down. I'd just like to say that I will not be supporting this application, primarily because it violates the intent of the rural zone to put this commercial activity in the heart of the rural zone, and the effects on the neighborhood will be significant. And we have had a lot of testimony from the neighbors, how they oppose this, and very heartfelt testimony. Also, my concern is that I've not seen anything to convince me that their wells would be protected by a commercial well so close to their wells. And we haven't made any considerations for them to mitigate that, only leaving the recourse to re-drill, recase their own wells, and or seek recourse through the legal system. And I think that question is still open, and those are the reasons that I will not be supporting this application.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Allen, for your comments for the record. All right, Commissioner Rauschke, how do you vote, sir?
Aye, with grave concerns.
Okay. Commissioner Dumas, how do you vote, sir?
I vote aye.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Allen, how do you vote, ma'am?
I vote no.
Thank you. Commissioner Held?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Baker?
I with great concerns.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioner Curtis, how do you vote, ma'am?
Aye.
All right. And I, Anderson Horn, vote aye because this is a use specifically identified as appropriate for the rural zone. And I believe the applicant has acted in good faith and provided us everything we've asked for. So that motion carries with 1 nay and 6 ayes, though a couple of those are with concern.
Did Hank vote?
Yeah, Hank voted aye.
Okay, sorry, I missed it.
Sorry, there was a little interference, but yeah, he voted. Unless I'm wrong, Hank, you did vote, right? And I did catch that correctly?
He did say aye.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right. Okay, so subject to the conditions of approval and the eventual action of various other subdivisions of the county government of Chaffey County, this application, limited impact review, is approved. I want to thank everyone for their engagement in this process. This has been contentious, and I appreciate how very nearly completely civil everyone has been throughout this long process. If there's not any other business for the night, I think we should adjourn and go home. Any other business, any comments, anything?
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
If I know someone who expressed interest to me about being on this commission. What do I tell them to do if they want to pursue that?
I think they would, is it Patty still that they would contact?
They would contact the county commissioner's office.
County commissioners, yeah.
Okay.
And will it be a year before there's an opening though, just so they know?
Oh,
Yes.
about a year.
Yeah, we just went through, I guess they selected a bunch of new people that we haven't met yet.
Oh, good. All right.
We do have openings on the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, I am currently the only person on the Board of Adjustment, so. Woo! We only meet once a quarter, give or take.
Board of Adjustment.
All right.
Commissioner, this is John Rorta. I don't know if we had brought this up before. Maybe I missed the first moment of this meeting, but the town of Buena Vista has requested a joint meeting between the Chaffey County Planning Commission and the town of Buena Vista Planning Commission on February 16th at 6 p.m. to discuss our intergovernmental agreement. I hope you folks will be able to make that meeting. We can send you more details regarding it. It would occur at 6 o'clock in the evening. It's a Wednesday. And I know this is above and beyond all of what we're asking you to do. Thomas specifically, the town has said, the town legal counsel has said that they do not want you to attend this meeting, but I hope you might all be able to reply to whether or not you would be able to make it.
Just clarification, John, is that a meeting of about the IGA between the elected boards, or is it a joint planning commission meeting with the planning commissioners?
It is a joint meeting between the planning commissioners
Okay.
to discuss what the current IGA is. And essentially what we're trying to do is get the planning commissions together to introduce each other and be familiarized and discuss what our next steps might be.
And did you say where that is? Is it in BV? Oh, Zoom meeting, okay.
Zoom. And would it by any chance be possible to have any of the code people, one person from that, attend and listen?
Well, I anticipate that I will be attending. I hope Christy can attend, maybe Greg can attend. Mark Doring, who is the planning manager, will be there. I expect that Joseph Teipel will also be there.
How about Logan Simpson? Request them to come?
Oh, Christy, you've got a very good point there, and they would
Marshall.
be a very appropriate attendee.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really good introduction to some of the growth area challenges that we have that they're gonna have to address. So bring it on.
Agreed.
But you're right. Logan Simpson will be there if possible, and this won't be the last meeting to discuss the IGA. This is just the first, so.
Okay.
Well, thank you, planning commissioners. You rock.
Thank you, staff. All right, and even though you didn't get to speak, thanks to the members of the public who were here tonight. Your engagement is essential to our work.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that next week we have officer elections. Is there a list of folks who have expressed interest in officer positions, or exactly how is this going to work?
I don't think we've gotten there. I don't even think have we even been sent the names of the new people?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was just
So come
waiting.
next week, all will be revealed.
Yeah,
Well,
sure. why not?
Bear, how about you volunteer for commissioner?
I am a commissioner.
Well, chair.
That's not gonna happen.
All right. Well, there will be things to discuss, I'm sure. All right. Unless there's anything else, I say good night. Thank you for all
Good night,
your
all.
hard work.
Thank you all.
Yeah.